Bay. I come from Renaissance College, so I'm doing the internship as part of my post engineering program, and after this, I'm
Learned about this a few days ago, a few weeks ago. So I'm very interested. I need feedback.
Oh, no longer?
Huh?
No longer.
No.
Oh, okay.
Actually, he's supposed to move to Taiwan
Oh,
for another job.
wow.
Teaching MIP design, heavy design. Anyway, so since I'm very uncertain of when I'm gonna go to Taiwan, so I'm just gonna be chilling and doing a project again.
Hi, I'm Kelvin. I joined MakerBay since this year March. I'm a content creator here.
I'm John, and I came to Makeaway at around the same time as Kevin did. I'm also a content creator.
Nice to see you, Nick.
Oh, yeah, you can talk.
Yeah, we've been talking but not see.
Hi. Okay, and I think we have somebody also online. Oh, sorry.
Well, I can skip it.
Yeah.
I'm Gabriel. I'm audio officer. I came here like 2 months. Yeah, 2 months. Yeah.
And online we have Aditya Hingo. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Sorry, I can't hear
Aditya?
you very clearly.
Okay. Can you please introduce yourself?
I am Aditya Hingu and I live in Mumbai in India and I am in 11th grade. Yeah.
What are you interested in? What
I
are you interested in?
am interested in, I learn Indian classical music and I also love doing like environmentally like conservation projects and I enjoy making things.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Are you going to be with us during the summer or just today?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
And we have Chiki on the phone. I can see Chiki online. Chiki?
Hi,
Do you hear
Caesar.
us,
How
Chiki?
are you? Yes.
Hold on. Okay, there's
Hello,
a thing.
everyone.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself, Chiki?
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Chiki, and I have been with the Makerbase since 2018 October. And I was the CEO of Makerbay. And as of 30th of June, I have resigned. However, this project is really exciting. And even before I joined Makerbay, I joined several projects with Caesar. So I think by the end of the day, I would like to see how I can contribute to the project and have a role on it. And I'm really excited. So, yes, happy to meet you all. Um, yeah, I love working with young people and working on anything which has a social or environmental impact. So this is really exciting for me and hands-on. I love doing something that's more hands-on. So that's a brief introduction from me.
So my name is Cesar John Harda. I started Makerbay 6 years ago. I recently handed the foundation side to Oriane. And so now I'm focusing on the Makerbay Limited. The project I'm going to be presenting today, though, is under my name as an artist. So you might see Cesar John Harada as the artist, because actually I came to Hong Kong first as an artist, as a media arts artist. But then because there's a floating structure involved, and so I need to get insurance, this is produced under my robotics company, which is called Scoutbots. Scoutbots is actually the mother company of Makerbay. So Makerbay company, in which we are today, is the sort of the child company of my first company, Scoutbots, that I started many years before. And so I'm going to introduce to you first the project, Ocean Imagineer. And after that, actually, I will also pass on to Jess, who's done a lot of the background research, who's going to basically show you the project management infrastructure. And basically, the idea of this first meeting is just to kick things off, just to kind of present you the big question that we're trying to ask, and also ask your first kind of impression, because we'd like to involve Makeaway Foundation as a sort of production manager for all this, or like a big part of what is educational. Because once the platform is built, which a big part of the platform will be built here in the workshop downstairs, then we also want to run activities with young people. And so we'd love to actually engage Makeaway Foundation to guide the young people through creative workshop, and some of them more technical. So we have a lot of partners that I will introduce. So some of them more with university, some of them with a nonprofit like the Nature Conservancy and so on. But I'll dive into the fine detail in a minute. So we have a presentation here, and I'm just going to walk you through it. So the project is called Ocean Imagineer. Oh, online, you guys need to share my screen. Sorry. Can you hear my voice? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes, it's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll share my screen. All right. Yes, the project is called Ocean Imagineer. So the word Imagineer is an invented word, which is a mix of imagination and engineer. That title was sort of suggested to me by the curator. Actually, you will see that this is really a collaborative project. My initial design has been changed a lot by the curator, and you can still change quite a bit with your inputs. So the exhibition is called Via North Point, which is an art exhibition happening on the North Point Promenade. Maybe you've seen the ferry. There's a ferry here. It's basically there. There's a space that has water, which is between the promenade and then the highway which is actually above the sea. The key idea is that the humans try to dominate nature, and they're not very well integrated with the sea, with the other animals. And actually, in North Point, there used to be lots of sea life, and it used to be a destination for swimming. Actually, like 70 years ago, people used to go to North Point with their families, and they would go to swim on the weekend. But now, the whole place that used to be the swim area has been reclaimed. So it's now all concrete and buildings and factories and the whole North Point industrial area. And the idea is that if we want to have clean water one day and being able to take your family to North Point and swim in the clean water, then you actually need the other species, because there's a lot of the species like filtering animals. They actually filter the water, so they make the water clean. So the idea is that if you want a clean environment, you need to tolerate the other species. So that's the key message. So yes, so North Point was once a popular place to swim for families. But not be mistaken. Humans were not alone in this clean water. It is the abandoned biodiversity that made the water clean. Oyster and other filtering animals kept the Hong Kong water clean. If we ever want to swim in clean water again, we must bring back other species and learn to live with them together with other species. So there's a quote, open quote, rewilding is not about abandoning civilization, but about enhancing it. It is also, it is to love not man the less, but nature more. So this is by George Monbiot, who's a sort of philosopher and who used to work for the Guardian. Okay, so that's the introduction. So this is the whole application that we give to the naval architect. So I won't go too much into the detail, but basically we've broken it down into big parts, mechanical. So this is an experiment that I built last year with my architecture students and some students from marine biology. And then we built a fish farm in 2 days. So we designed it for about 1 month. But when it came to construction, we did really, really fast. Just on the beach, we just brought some bamboo, cut it, and assembled it on the beach in 2 days. And you can see that's the size of a standard sort of a bamboo, like a traditional fish farm. So this experiment was documented on GitHub, and it gave us the confidence that we can build something very fast, very cheap, and quite a big scale. So that was the first experiment that felt like, okay, it's possible to do that kind of stuff. The second experiment is what we built this year, this past academic year. So that was about a month and a half ago. With my master's students, we built a system to grow oysters. This is the life cycle of an oyster, from larvae to be like a small baby oyster with a foot and cilia, so it's like a little foot to walk around, and then some little arms to grab things around. And then they attach themselves, oops, and then the oyster will attach themselves to something, and then they will grow into big oysters. And then 2 years later, they can reproduce, and the cycle of life goes on like this. And so in the very early stages of being a baby oyster, you want to recreate the condition in which the oysters are growing. And the natural way that oysters are growing is that they are intertidal species. They live between the tides, between the low tide and the high tide, most of them. And so this machine has two water pumps. One water pump that brings the water up, it will bring water up for a couple of hours, and then it will stop. And then later it will bring the water down. And so the oyster, the oyster will be tricked to the natural system, to the natural rhythm, sorry, to think that they are in nature. The second system is a bit different. This one can be only feeding in one direction. A couple of hours a day, the oysters are in water, and then we move the water with the pump, and we feed them. We're trying to feed them as fast as possible, so they can grow big and fat as quickly as possible. So those two systems are the system that you need before you release the oysters into nature. And so again, we're building these two systems with my students. We're building with like Coca-Cola soda bottles and gardening hose and some like lab and gardening equipment. We felt, okay, well, it's possible to build this system quite affordably and quite fast. So we also felt that we built the confidence to build such systems. So the project I want to show you now is basically the convergence of these two previous experiments. One which is the structure, the building, if you will, and the other one is what's happening inside. So this design that you see is a design that's not the final design. That was like an engineering concept. This design was presented for the Green Tech Fund, from which we're still waiting to hear, which is Hong Kong National Green Technology Grant, basically. But to give you just a very quick overview, you can see on the rooftop you have solar panels. These solar panels are feeding a hydrogen tank. So you are basically having the electricity go into a water tank, break the water into hydrogen and oxygen. And then here we have some small wind turbine, but this is just more for decoration for testing. Underwater oysters. So the idea is that you have a platform that goes one in the water with the oyster and increase biodiversity. It's supposedly by 6 times. So when you have oysters, they actually are a habitat for other species. And it will produce clean energy with solar panel and produce a hydrogen, which is the cleanest energy storage that you can find out there. So I will go more into the detail, but then this was kind of the big, blocky, ugly original design, which was just like looking at purely engineering. It was not looking at the cultural aspects. But now I'm going to show you the new design. So this exhibition is curated by the Hong Kong Art Center, which is I think one of the largest nonprofit and the oldest nonprofit dedicated to art. So they really want something that's more artistic in the first place. And they say that if you want to have cultural and technological change, you need to convince people. And doing something that is just like a block may not be very attractive to people. But if you tell them a story about, like how it used to be, the environment used to be clean, that families, people had a personal relationship, and it also looks really good, then people may be more likely to accept this kind of technological change. And so the idea is that the timeline is very short. This has got to float on the water on the 30th of August. So actually, it's very soon. It's less than 2 months. But the insights, especially, is still very much open for discussion how we organize it. The idea is to create this place as sort of a room where we can have a lot of discussion of what we could do with the future of underwater biodiversity in Hong Kong. So the insight can be very, very much reorganized. You can see that some elements of oyster culture are represented. This is called a vat in which you can put the very young oyster larvae, in which you basically circulate water and the sperm of oyster can make babies. Then you have the like younger stage oyster, and this is the upwater system, and then you just have tables. But the idea is also to bring like a bench like this one, like the mecha bench, to the water. So the idea is that this is not something that we design all in advance and it's all over. The idea is that we bring essential function, and then for the 3 months of the exhibition, we can actually keep building it and keep improving it and keep doing experiments. After the exhibition, you may be wondering, is this going to become another form of waste? So that would be a concern, right? Actually, we have a partnership with the Nature Conservancy. On the left side is a raft engineer for the Nature Conservancy. The idea is that now the bamboo rafts, they need to be changed every 2 to 3 years. Bamboo is a living material. After 2 to 3 years in a saline environment, eventually the bamboo will rot and you just have to rebuild the whole platform. And the oyster farmers are becoming quite old, so they don't really have the strength to build this platform and the energy or the capital. They don't want to reinvest necessarily into this. What the Nature Conservancy say is that we need to make typhoon-ready structure because we're going to have more and more typhoon with climate change. This structure needs to be easily recyclable, so it needs to be made of a plastic that can be recycled easy, and it needs to be very, very low maintenance because all the oyster farmers just don't have the energy to do the maintenance. And so they have 2 platforms like this that they are testing, and they have entrusted me for the next few years to actually be the inspector of those platforms. The idea is that one platform I would go and clean, so I would basically dive underwater and clean the structure every season, every 2 or 3 months, and then the other one I would just let it be, and we'll see how long the platform can survive. And so the idea is to publish a report and say, yes, this plastic raft costs 70,000 Hong Kong dollars. The traditional raft was 30,000 Hong Kong dollars. But the new raft is guaranteed for 10 years. But the old raft, 2 or 3 years, you have to build it again. So it becomes cheaper also for the farmers to have those rafts. So the idea is to make a study of the viability of those rafts. So the idea is that all the functions that would be on the platform, which is artistic in North Point, will be then ported and installed on one of the plastic platforms. So like this, it's not wasted. Everything is continued to be used for research. Yes. So this is the more detailed view of the structure. It's basically a giant oyster with a hydraulic arm in the middle. Underwater, you can see there are these boxes. These are the oyster boxes. And this one is a concrete anchor. So these are anchors to maintain the ship so it doesn't move away. And so we have the structure is 18 tons, no, sorry, 7 tons, and 16 meters by 8 meters. I will walk you through the stages of construction. So this is how it will be built. So the first stage you can see is bamboo rafts, then is the cylinder and the lift structure, then the flooring, then getting the kind of the walls, installing the roof, and then cutting and separating the top and the bottom. And eventually you're able to lift it up. Then you access the structure by a little boat. So we have to build a small boat as well. And so this is what it looks like inside. It's basically a biology lab with a sort of a big workshop / meeting room inside, and it's sort of a make a bench on the side. And underwater, it's really where the magic happens. It's oysters and a bunch of sensors. And so it looks like an oyster. This is it. Ocean Imagineer. This is the exact location. So this is North Point. So it's very protected. This is not an area that would be huge wave or something like this. It would be a very protected area. It's easy to see from the water. You cannot jump on it. You have to take a small boat just from here and then just do like 30 meters to get to it. And it's very much inspired from existing traditional structure. On the left, these are existing floating warehouses in Laos Ocean. So it's very, very similar to what we're trying to do, except our form is much, much more funky, but basically it's similar to traditional architecture. The form is inspired from oysters. You can see here. These are the traditional oysters. We're looking at which type of oyster is best suited for this salinity, because if the water is too saline, it's not good for the oyster. So we don't know exactly which species is going to do the best. So this was the explanation of the system. The idea is to organize the oyster interior by areas, but it's not very, very defined yet. This is the system to grow oyster. These are basically these are like big water tanks. This is the model, which is over there, which we can bring afterwards. Yeah, and so I played the video, and at the same time I will take the model from the page. this is the yes. So this is the earlier design. So the design keeps changing. We get the feedback from the naval architects to tell us what to improve. So basically, biological lab. Yes. Yes. So I won't go even further in the detail, but basically we have a calculation of weight of each equipment, how to build, explaining our choice of components for hydraulics rather than hoist and chain or like Z lifts or mechanical. We give details about the electrics, the energy storage, where we store the water. And this is the last one I want to show you is basically Hong Kong, between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, there is actually between 5,000 to 10,000 oyster rafts. These rafts have been used actually for the last, not the raft, but in this area, we have been growing oyster for about 1,000 years. So this industry is 700 years old. The idea is that if you see the oyster raft that we're going to build is the size of one traditional oyster raft, which is 8 meters by 16 meters. 8 meters by 6 meters, if you cover it with solar panel, you can produce 10 kilowatts of solar electricity. If you have 2,500 of those installations, you can produce 25 megawatts of solar energy. Today, the largest solar panel installation in Hong Kong is in Lamma Island, next to the coal plant, and it produces a total of 1 megawatt. So this floating thing that we're building actually is sort of a pilot. And if we could extend our system to 2,500 of those oyster rafts, it would be by far, by a factor of 25, the biggest solar panel installation and renewable energy producer in Hong Kong. But you might say, well, this is really cool already for the environment. But what I think is even cooler than that is that the way that we are trying to design it is to not give it to CLP or Hong Kong Electric. The idea is to let the people being the electricity producer, which means that you're not paying the electricity bill if you are an oyster farmer, you're actually selling electricity. So not only you can support your 700 years old industry of oyster farming, which improves the quality of the water, improve biodiversity, but you can also have another line of revenue. You can actually make money by selling electricity. And in addition of that, we're not very far from the Hong Kong airport. If you look at the airport, it's by boat, it's actually quite fast. In the future, it's projected that a lot of the airplane will have to be powered by hydrogen. And also, the ships of the future are also thought and being currently engineered to be propelled by hydrogen. So hydrogen is really the energy of the future. By 2050, Hong Kong has pledged to be carbon neutral, and hydrogen is going to be a key piece of that. And China has pledged by 2060 to be carbon neutral. And 10% of the Chinese country overall budget, energy budget, needs to come from hydrogen. So hydrogen now is very, very early stage, but it can be incredibly profitable. I calculated as well that if we use 2,500 of these oyster rafts and we use 50% of the electricity it generates, it could produce up to 1 billion Hong Kong dollar per year of profits, of revenue, sorry, for this 25 megawatt installation. So we're still talking about massive revenue for the farmers. So yeah, so that's the introduction to the project. I will share with you this press release that I wrote yesterday evening. The exercise of the press release, the idea is also to give an overview, summarize, and make it as simple as possible, the project. So I wrote this press release and asked the confirmation of all the partners, if they're going to be joining the project, the founders, are they going to fund the project? So we know we have the budget from the Hong Kong Art Center for this will be built, but we have a few other sponsors with which we are in discussion, and that's including Google and NVIDIA or some other large companies that are interested to sponsor the project. So we have a discussion with them as well. So that's it for my introduction. So I'd love to have your questions. Yes.
What is the final size of the giant oyster?
Yes. So the original size that we wanted to do was a traditional size, which is 8 meters by 60 meters. Then we have a discussion with the naval architect, and he told us that bamboo, sometimes you have a good bamboo, sometimes you have a bad bamboo. And because it's going to go in Victoria Harbour, which is one of the busiest ports in the world, they say that they cannot insure us. So they say the dimensions of 8 meters by 60 meters is fine, but you need to make it out of aluminum or steel. So that's the size. They will be 2 meters above water when closed and 4 meters when open. And on the water, I think the max that we're looking at is 3 meters of oyster bags and probably a little bit longer for the anchors, maybe up to 10 meters for the anchors.
Yes. So solar panels are on top of the and for oyster farming. How will they sell the energy that they get since the oyster farms will be in the water?
That's a very good question. So this installation is the sort of artistic version or an arts and education version. The real one, which is the ugly square one, this one would be fully connected to the grid, and then we can sell. So this there have to be a cable that runs from the land, like you said. But the idea actually of hydrogen is that it untethers you from the land. If you are able to produce and store energy in those basically bottles, then you don't need to be connected to the land. One of the other reasons why hydrogen is so attractive to this particular geography of the North Ocean is that the oyster farm are moving all the time. So it would be quite difficult to have the cable, electric cable. Second reason is because the North Ocean oyster farm are very unregulated. They have been existing industrially, so like proper industrial usage of it for 200 years. And then it's shared 2,000, between 5,000 to 10,000 of those rafts are shared about by 200 family business. So, and a lot of those business have very, very old business. They exist before Hong Kong, they exist before the CCP, they exist before China, exist as a state. And so a lot of these business are very traditional business and they are unregistered. It's just a family business. And so maybe they don't have business registration, they don't pay taxes, and they don't really want to be regulated. So if you have a fish farm in Saigon, where you grow fish, it's very regulated. To get the license, you have to pay 1 million Hong Kong dollar for 10 meters by 10 meters. If you are in La Ocean, you don't have to pay. It's basically free. So my take on this is that if you have a cable and you have to connect them to one point, then somebody would have to keep all the files very, very organized. And I have to say, what is your account number? This is how much I can buy the hydrogen from you today. And this is how much I pay the electrics. So you have to pay your taxes on it. But from talking to a lot of the oyster farmers, they don't really want to tell us, like, this is my. If you go, there's no name, there's no registration number of oyster farm. The farmers know, but nobody else knows. And so the idea of being able to produce hydrogen and then just sell bottle by bottle is the same logic as selling oyster like oyster. So you remain very free. It means you don't have to be traceable. And so in order to keep the oyster farmer to be completely free, we're actually looking at blockchain technology. Because if we can trace the origin of this hydrogen, you have different types of hydrogen. So you can produce hydrogen with coal plants. You can have a coal plant with black smoke coming out of it, put the electrodes in the water, you can produce hydrogen. But this is called gray hydrogen or dirty hydrogen. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have green hydrogen. You have solar panel, which is clean energy, and then you break up water and you can get clean. But then you need to be able to trace it. You need to have a certificate to prove that you are green hydrogen. So for that, we're looking at some blockchain technology to trace the origin of hydrogen and also to sell it at a good market rate. So yeah, so the idea is that right now it's atomized, distributed structure. Maybe in the future, if it becomes very big, maybe it'll be connected by like a cable like that. But at this stage, we're not going to be producing a lot. This platform is more like a demo. So my thinking is that we might be producing like maybe 10 liters of hydrogen. The other reason why we don't want to produce too much is hydrogen is explosive. So I think if I have too much of it, Then we have to have a different permission and different insurance. And if it explodes, it will literally kill people. So you don't, you probably heard about hydrogen bomb, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to produce a hydrogen bomb by accident. Yeah. Other question?
Yes. So, now the least where do you get the big oyster?
Very good question. So the baby baby would come from Laoshan. So in Laoshan, they have a traditional oyster farm. I want to show you. So this is really important to show this. Okay. So there's two professors. One professor is basically working with a farmer. He gives to the Hong Kong farmer free oyster babies for a couple of years, and he helps them to make profit basically by improving the breed of. So this is Professor Rajan. He's from India. There's a second professor called Professor Byron Russell, and he's from Australia. And he doesn't really care about farming. He's more interested in the ecosystem services, the good things that oysters do for the environment. And he made the similar videos like this one. On the left side of the tank is just water and no oyster. On the right side of the tank, you can see it's the dirty water plus the oyster. Yeah, that's the video. So you can see very quickly the oyster will clean the water. So the oysters that we want to use are the oyster from La Rochelle. The problem we have, well, the good thing is that those oysters are some of the world's biggest oysters. If you let them grow, they can grow like 8 years and become bigger than my face. They're gigantic. Wow. Yes. I'm not like this. No, but they become like the size of a shoe, basically. They become the size of a shoe. Imagine an oyster like this size. It's really massive for an oyster. Like if you go to France, most of the oysters that we eat on the market will be the size of my heels at most. And you can eat them like this. The Hong Kong oyster is the biggest one from La Rochelle. It's like a steak. It's like eating a big steak. So yes, but the problem is that so the good thing is that they're really big and they can filter a lot of water. The downside is that the La Rochelle oyster, they live in brackish water. Brackish water is a mix of salt water and fresh water because they have water from the river. And so we don't know how well they're going to do in North Point because it's much more salty water. So the scientists, they say that maybe they are not going to do very well, and other species of oyster, which are more saltwater oyster, and also mussels, maybe they are going to do better, and that's okay. And they are interested, and just to talk about more about this, about running what we call a recruitment experiment. So that means that we bring some substrate, some medium for the oyster to grow, and then we see which one grows the fastest.
In the water.
Correct, exactly. So because we don't know exactly, part of the experiment is to see which one can grow the best. Another idea is also that on the floor of the oyster raft, to have some lines. This I haven't told you yet, but I've been thinking about it, is if you had some lines between the floating barrels with a transparent floor, and then we can open the gates and you can let the water in, and then you can see which species is filtering the water the best. So you let the dirty water, just like this. Imagine that this is basically in the pore. And so like this, we could see and measure precisely how quickly the water is being cleaned by those different species. So we take juveniles and adults, for example, we make 2 lines. And then we take mussels at a different line. And then we take other species. And then we can see how quickly they clean the water. So that's something that we could do. So the idea that I would like to discuss with you is actually how can we design those experiments to be good for education, but also to be good for science. And how we can put sensors on it and collect the data. Oh yes, so oysters are eating algae. So right now, scientists in HKU, the way they work is that every week they bring a truck of seawater up the mountain in HKU, and they also have to grow the algae that the oyster normally find in the water. So it's good because it's a controlled environment, but it's super energy intensive. So now the Hong Kong oysters are grown on top of a mountain, and the seawater is trucked every week And you have like an army of scientists like working to like correct the pH of the water because it's not the natural environment. So this floating oyster will be two firsts. It will be the first floating hatchery in the region. So it's the first place where we can grow oysters in an environmentally friendly way with low carbon because we don't carry the water out of the mountain. And the second will be the first offshore hydrogen plant. So nobody has produced hydrogen in the sea so far. People have been doing some small experiments in university, but nobody has actually built one that is on the water. It will be very small, but it is possible. Okay. And then you might be asking, how do you make hydrogen? I wrote you a hydrogen generator. It's called a hydrogen electrolyzer. This thing, this is basically as small as this. It can be as small as this. So thing that you can play with from age 9 in Germany. I don't know. So basically, you put water inside this. You run electricity plus and minus here, and then you have hydrogen coming from this side and oxygen coming from this side. There's a bigger part of the kits, and you can basically build a hydrogen-powered car, or you could produce hydrogen from wind turbine as well. So yes, so part of the work will be to play with those kits and building it. Another part of the work would be to go in La Rochelle, dive under the oyster farms. Another part of the job would be to go to North Point and swim around and see what's under the water before we go. Another part of the job would be to go to HKU and talk to the scientists and some engineering professor who live like computer science and like wireless technology or like sensors and so on. So, yeah. That's another fun part of the project. Is playing with toys. Other question?
In the video, I see there are lot we put a lot of water in a certain of box between the water. But if we want to like have on the ocean, how many oyster we need?
Yeah, it's a very good question as well. So so you can see there. This is not the latest status, but I think it's a good presentation. Yeah. So the oysters raft, the one they love shine, completely covered with oyster, but also it's quite heavy, right? And it's for production. I think for us it's for education. So we want to have enough to do education and to do also some experiments. There's also the question of cost. So one rope, which is 3 meters covered with oyster, that costs $100 Hong Kong. And so it depends how many different species we want to have. The reason why it's $100 Hong Kong is because one of the most expensive parts of the oyster farming is shucking. Once you get the oyster, you need to cut them out of the rope, separate them. That's super tedious work and kind of dangerous. Like it's easy to crush yourself. So buying the oyster raw as a raw is actually quite affordable. But the budget basically is also limited, so we can buy as many as we can afford. Also, if you do an experiment, you can't have just one oyster. Like every time you look at an oyster, you have to look at a sample. So let's say if you want to compare oyster and then mussels over time, then you can say that every day you want to open some oysters and then look into their gills, their breathing system, and digestive system, how they're doing. If you open just one and this oyster is sick, you're going to have a huge deviation. So that would give you wrong results. So unfortunately, you may have to kill several oysters every week in order to have an average of a population of oysters. So that means that then you have to have many more oysters. As long as you just have one oyster a day, so 59 oysters, but it looks like we need much more than that. And also, we make an experiment, for example, where we measure how well the oysters are doing depending on their depth. So depending on the depth of the water, the composition of water and temperature is very different. On the surface, water tends to be warm, and underwater, it's much colder generally. If you swim in the water, you probably have felt it. You're swimming, and if you go down, it becomes much colder very quickly. And also, the speed of the currents is faster on the surface, and it's also at the bottom. So it means that the population of oyster may be under different factors on the water and on top of the water. So maybe it's another experiment that we can run this one. That's it. Oh. So, right. Well, if we kill them, we can definitely eat them. It depends what we want to observe. If you want to observe just their growth, then some measurements can be done from outside. You can take a caliper, or you can just measure them every day or every week, and we can see them growth. Then we don't need to kill them. If you want to know how they are taking on the chemistry of the water, then you need to go into their guts. Or you can measure their food. Maybe there's some different ways to do it. Some people say, actually, the research said that oyster is the greenest with mussels. Mussels and oyster are the greenest type of protein that you can eat because you don't need any water to feed them because they live in the water. And they don't emit methane gas, so they're not emitting any CO2 or any greenhouse gas basically. So and also they also clean the water. So out of all the meats, oysters and mussel, they actually be the greenest meat you can actually eat. But there's some contradictory research that say that when you eat them, it's like immense suffering for them because when you cut the muscle, it's the same nerve structure as your spinal cord. It's just as if you cut the spinal cord of a human being before you just eat them alive.
For oysters. Yeah, that's one thing that since we researched veganism, Western that oysters do have a resistance to
Yes.
Which now that I know that, which makes me, of course, more favorable to eating mussels because they don't have this pain.
So that's something that we can also discuss on the platform. For the science, that may have sort of a process, but that's something that we can also question. So instead of opening them up, then we can have, say, maybe something to catch the poop in the water. We can do analysis on the poop or just on the water. So we can also design experiments reflecting our values and what we're trying to address as a question. If what we're trying to address is how much does it clean the water, then we don't need to treat them at all. Then we just measure the water quality and that's good enough.
For current design, the author are like bad hand-on after distributing.
Yes. So
because like every day or every week you need to like text some of the authors. That's right. Then how can you put them out?
Very good question. So the way they do this on the Oyster graphs, traditionally, I had a picture of you could see the limits. This is the way they traditionally do it. You basically go in blue jeans and dirt, and they just have a rope attached to the bamboo and they just lift it. It's quite heavy. Like one rope is like 30 kg. It's heavy. So the old people, old farmers, they're very strong. But some of them are like in the 70s, so it's quite hard. So one of the things that I'm proposing is to have a system where we can lift it like this, just like you would have a well. So this is not designed to this yet, but the idea is that if we can have a sort of a bridge, some structure, and you can just lift it like this with a rope, you don't need to pull and break the rest. So that would be anti-looks. And then she's checking the oysters. So this is Mr. Chan, and he's the farmer that we're actually working with. He's going to excel the lift.
What's my interest?
So the interest is that he's been working together with me, or really with Professor Bajan. So the industry is very old, and since the late 2000s, a lot of people they are afraid to eat the Hong Kong oysters because of the pollution. In 2014, half of the deep bay, so it's the bay that separates Hong Kong and Shenzhen. On the Shenzhen side, the government just say no more oysters. zero oyster. Remove all the oyster farm. They say you cannot grow oysters because they are polluted. Maybe some people get sick, but people will get sick in seafood, so it's not very clear. On the Hong Kong side, they made measurements and they say, no, the water is a bit polluted, like everywhere, but it's not that bad. And so since 2014, the production and the consumption of oyster has really gone down. So the Hong Kong government have been trying to see how they can maintain this industry that used to be really huge. The Pearl River Delta, the whole region, the name Pearl River comes from the fact that we have oyster that have pearls in them. The whole region's name comes from oyster. Just like New York, actually Hong Kong used to be a place with so much oysters. Oysters were literally the cheapest meat you can buy. You could go instead of buying a steak, you can buy oyster. It was cheap, really cheap. And still today, traditionally, you have the oyster omelets, right? So you have eggs and oysters and they're fried, and that's very traditional. So in 2016, I think, Rajan, my collaborator, he convinced the government to invest into a new facility, a new technology called depuration. Depuration is how to make the oyster more pure. They actually studied, they found that if you put an oyster that is quite polluted in super clean water with high salinity, with azote micro bubbles, so it's a special gas that is so azote. And then if you have UV light in the water, you can basically completely disinfect and drain the digestive system of the oysters, and it becomes much safer for human consumption. You can kill all E. coli, you can kill things that you all the human feces that you have in the water, you can basically clean it all out. So it takes 24 hours, basically the digestive system cycle of the oyster, and then the oysters are much more safe to clean. So they have done that. But now the problem is that most of Hong Kong people, they don't really like to buy and eat Hong Kong oysters. They prefer to import Japanese, French, American, some Chinese oyster, which are the small, very soft oyster, very easy to eat. The Hong Kong oysters are much bigger, much more strong, they are much more hardy, and so they are not very popular right now. So the industry is going down because people think it's polluted. The more it's polluted and the less oyster you have, and it's that the oyster can clean the pollution. But actually, the less oyster you have, the more pollution. It's getting worse and worse all the time. So for environmental reasons, we need to bring back the oyster. It's really important. Then for economic reasons, if we don't bring the oyster back, then there's 200 families that will lose their main source of livelihood and the lifestyle that they had for 700 years. So the indigenous people of Hong Kong will live from oyster for 700 years, then they have lost their livelihood, which is also very bad as well. So there are many reasons why it would be a very good thing to keep those oysters alive.
Maybe just to put it in the context of foundation, the foundation, because like this is a big project that you just learned about, and so the market for something. So what we discussed with Sita originally is for us to take it from the education point of view and to see how we can use that as a platform to also teach people about maker education and use that as an excuse to implement. So this would be like a topic to talk about conservation, to talk about cleaning the water, pollution, and original species and original working. We talk about that through workshops in so this is something we need to discuss, like what do we want to humanize, what kind of tools do we content so that's one of the things we can decide. That we're going to think to have this kind of platform to showcase also how maker education is relevant to so many different topics. And this one is a great topic because it's really related to the environment and also Hong Kong specific industries.
What I forgot to say as well, the coral box.
And yes.
So the coral box would actually be, so personally, because I'm so busy with building the platform, I can only work on the coral box development. The robot, I don't know about this, we're building a robot that can now coral reef. But this is also quite an ambitious project, and we want to do really well. So we're going to focus on that until all those years. Once this platform is built, and we have a couple of programs going, it's quite repetitive. We're saying like every day or every week, check the oysters, measure something, and then maybe later publish some graph and make the measurements. That's great. But we have another experiment that we have funding for as well, which is a robot that maps coral reef. So it's basically a boat with cameras, and it takes lots of pictures. So this platform can also be used for educational workshop or another project that we also have, which is the coral reef mapping robot, Coral Bot. So that can be integrated as well.
Yeah.
Right now, we haven't written any workshops. So between August 30th, August 30th is the launch day, and this mental day is, or like takeaway day is December 1st. We haven't written any workshops, so that's what we'll have to discuss maybe.
So now we have the only one we have done with Coralbot was related to AI specifically.
Right.
So it's the one we taught in Ocean Park in November. I think Kelvin and John, maybe you've heard about it. Gabriel, maybe not too much. But yeah, we were teaching a workshop around how AI can be useful for coral conservation using the Coralbot, so the robots that has been made by MakerBay, as the tool to teach them about it. So the workshop was very software oriented. So they learn about basics of AI. They learn about how to use Teachable Machine, which is a small AI tool that is online, that is very easy to use. And then they help us to do some labeling for images of corals that we later were able to put into our AI and to train our AI with it. That's what we did so far. I think it was a good workshop, but very software based because we had to be online. So it was really like you had to be in front of your computer. I think here what we're looking at is something very more manual than software, because we want people to be coming physically to that place, to North Point. Yeah, so that it's really going to be a little bit different. Later on, we can share the PowerPoint of that class with everyone, so that you know what this was about. Yeah, and so in terms of activities around that, what that would be starting in late August,
Right.
and it could last until
December 1st.
December 1st.
Mhm.
And we could have like over weekends, for
Right.
example.
So-
Is there any kind of framework from the Art Center about that?
So imagine that this space is actually a public space, right? So even without our exhibition, every month there's 50,000 people walking by, just because they're just walking through the park. Because there will be an art exhibition, they will do some promotion. So you can expect maybe another, I don't know, let's be not too ambitious. Let's say there's another 10,000 people extra per month. So let's say 60,000 people per month. Of course, this platform is not connected to the land, so we cannot welcome too many people to walk on this platform. Also, we cannot have at night some kid going there and fishermen getting drunk and falling down and accidents. We cannot. So 24 hours a day, especially at night, there'll be security guards that will be on the land looking after all the artworks and making sure nobody gets on the platform. I would say the exhibition actually have two main parts. There is what's on the water, and then on the land, we would like to have a display. So just from the land, because most people will not have the chance to go on the little boat, go on the platform, we still want them to understand what this is about, right? So the suggestion from the professor is to have some display where we show this kind of experiment that they have already videos of. And so at least they can see, oh, there's this weird floating structure on the water. What is this for? But then they can see that there's a panel. So imagine this in the water here, and they can see, oh, okay, this giant oyster has oysters on the water, and we can see it, and we can see the video of the water being cleaned by the oysters, and then we can see a diagram with the solar panel, with the hydrogen tank, and then you can see there's a hydrogen tank on the platform outside the platform, so people will be able to see. So this is so what HKU scientists want to do is that every week some researcher from HKU will go on the edge and then they will pull up a rope with oysters and different animals on the display on the land. And then they will explain their research that they do at HKU about biodiversity, about recruitment, about specific like a choice, how do you choose a species. So that's what they would like to do on the land.
So weekly, they would like to come and kind of have a mini conference.
Exactly, just to do
Okay.
demo.
Okay.
And that would be maybe 2 or 3 times in the afternoon, open for children, for adults. So this is what the HKU wants to commit to do. So it's very simple. So that's Nature Conservancy and HKU. Now on the platform, there's nothing that's basically up to us. My thinking was to organize something every weekend, and then we could rotate. So it could be a workshop in the afternoon, or Sunday afternoon. I don't know. Whenever you think it's a good time, we can organize something, and we cannot sell oyster for food. It's the only one of the only limitations because then you have to have a restaurant license.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can donate. We can give for free to eat us, but we cannot sell it. So yeah. So what do you imagine? Imagine you have a giant oysters. Oysters are growing there. And you want to teach people about oysters and what kind of activities do you think would be fun to do? Yes.
Like, for example, the oyster cycle, you guys can imagine like the younger kids,
Mhm.
you know, competition where kids have to map out like oyster cycle. Right?
Mhm.
Like definitely like try to see if they can identify the species.
Uh-huh.
So like after you show them the pictures, it's like, okay, pick 5 of these species.
Mm.
They're like looking out the window, check, okay, this one's that. See, that is basically so like, oh, I want to see the difference. So like, you know, by mapping out the cycle and the education for kids to be like, oh, actually, and a lot of times family that goes, right?
Mhm.
So the parents themselves would be educated through the process.
That's a really good idea. So would it be fair to say the kids to figure which fish in the water? Yeah.
The cycle of the cycle. Like digestive cycle. Which one's the water ones? The digestive cycle, right?
About the life cycle of oysters. Sense?
Also, like, I mean, you can do like
Yes.
like food weekend, so you can actually have like actual time for those like TA. From you, professor can show up at the right time.
Right.
You don't have to like, you know, have like an empty audience.
Yes.
Like then we'll, and I'm pretty sure a lot of places, like when you open those platforms up,
Yeah.
the public tours, I mean, then like people on, so it's not wasted.
Right.
Like 4 people show up now.
Exactly. Actually, we have a lot of schools, people that when we start to talk about this project, they're super excited and want to bring their kids on it. So I think if we make a website, we clearly say these are the kind of activities that we're going to do on board and see what they can learn and experiment. I do agree. I think they'll be very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really exciting that you can like invite like collaborators to school or like kids make videos about history.
Right.
I mean, like, oh, this is going to be the pilot of bulk, right? Like, you want to persuade those farmers to like put solar panels.
Right. Right.
I just keep thinking like, maybe close. I mean,
Yeah.
is that one giant thing close?
So So this is not the completely cloud design, but I think it's pretty, yes, quite close. So this is how it is when it's closed. So you can see it's basically two halves, and it's just cuts. And if you open it, it's basically like that. See, there's like a hydraulic arm. So that's the current design. The problem with this design that I found is that on one hand, you want the teeth to be nicely overlapped like this, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that you want the teeth to be low enough here so you can easily step in.
But you want like something like
Exactly.
down in front of you, right? Yeah.
So I think the opening has got to be quite close to this side, because if you make the opening here, then you're gonna have to kind of squeeze yourself, because then it'll be too small. The second thing is that if the step is too low, if there's some waves coming, then you're gonna be doing extra and then you're like waves. So that's not good. So you have to find sort of a fine balance between like having a stable structure and having a waterproof structure. So here you see the entrance over there. So that's where I put the entrance here. But this is not a good place because you would have to crawl down. You would have to be like, oh, cool. You have to sort of get inside. So that's an okay design. It's in the wrong place. It would have to be somewhere we can actually. It would have to be like on this side where you can basically stand up and just like walk. But also you have to have the handrail so the people don't freak out and they can catch something when they get in, both from the boat and on the platform. Yeah. There's some provisions for the life jacket as well. Life jackets. Yeah. So like being ready for COVID, being ready if somebody falls in the water. They've been thinking about like how do you trace for COVID-19?
I guess you put the QR code, right?
Yeah, QR code. Or like just like in a normal restaurant. What do you do for heavy rain? What do you do if there are big waves? So you have to think about all that stuff. Like what do you do if there's a lot of wind? And that's the display. So that's the location of the display would be. So the platform will be here, and there will be a display here. So most people would see this.
Are they going to keep the rail?
Yes, that's by regulation.
Oh.
So that means that the demonstrator
would
be here, and then there's a moment where the demonstrator will basically jump over the fence and then pull a rope, and at the end of the rope there will be a box full of animals.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then you need to get the permission to attach a rope here or a steel cable. I think it would have to be a steel cable because we don't want anybody to come and cut it and bring home to eat.
Yeah. And it's quite tiny, right? This area is quite small.
Yes.
So they wouldn't allow to remove one of the barriers for safety, you know?
Maybe possible. Yeah. I would imagine that it could also just be here for most of the demonstration as well. I'm not entirely sure. Basically, we have to work with the HK people to sort of design this display and at the same time understand what kind of experiment they want to run. My understanding is they want to basically have just a couple of boxes with oysters, and they want to have empty medium to see if you put empty medium, what will come to live there. Well, what will come to live on this platform. You want to see what kind of animal or algae grows basically naturally in the same environments.
And for organizing workshops, is there another place or
on the platform?
On the platform, right?
Yeah. Oh, another place.
But are we allowed to have kids on the platform?
So, so the way it's going to be, I think they will have to do like prior booking, and then we will have to have the permission from the parents basically to come. And what might be kind of funny is that at all times you might have to wear a life jacket on board. So it may be kind of annoying, but
but that makes sense. I think.
If there's big waves,
and
there's a kid that just like falls in the water,
need to
or like 2 or 3 of them fall in the water, and you won't be able to like stay free at the same time. So they need to float, right? They need to stay float.
Maybe a rubber duck kind of thing.
You know, I'm asking because, you know, sometimes they have weird restriction about like industrial building, you're not supposed to have kids.
Right.
So I was wondering about this part, or do they have a minimum age or same to
Yeah.
we think about that?
So some of it might be dictated by the insurance.
Yeah.
Because to get this structure, we have to have insurance, right?
Of course.
Otherwise, there's no way that you can deploy it. And so they may tell us, we think that your structure is, you know, certified by engineer, and we're confident that it's fine. Then you can bring, let's say, up to 20 people on board, no problem. They can be children or adults, doesn't matter. Or they might be very restricted and say you can only bring 10 people, and before they come, you have to have the signed permission from the parents that if they die, you know, they're not going to sue you, basically.
Yeah.
So this we have to figure with the insurance company, what they allow, and then our lawyers as well, like what they allow us to do. And then the exhibition that they have put together.
Yeah.
With us doing as well.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at 15 people on board from the public, 3 people from our team to be there, so 18 people in max. That's the sort of capacity we're looking at. Yeah. The structure should be super stable and no problem, but we don't want to overload it, so that's sort of what is rated. Also, if you have a lot of water tanks are super heavy, so the calculation is made so that even if you have full tanks, full feed, full electric battery, full everything, 4 people, then 15, 18 people should be okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, for maker stuff, I don't know, we could do stuff around solar panels, like making them do things with mini solar panels would be fun. I know we had insects at some point, like we made insects or mini cars, could be a mini boat with solar panels, could be nice to show them that how it works. Yeah, it could be something around also making like small things with bamboo, right? You could make your own model boat with bamboo. That's always fun, I think, to do, and quite accessible for anyone. For hydrogen kit, I'm quite curious about that.
Yeah.
Not sure how that works, or you know how it could. Yeah.
So if it's that small, it's actually very, very safe. But
So, yeah, how do you show like what's visible for them?
You pour water into this, and then you connect it to the battery, and then when it works, you can see bubbles coming up.
That could be interesting to try. Have you tried this before?
Kind of.
Okay.
Cool. Did you make your own kit, or did you buy a kit?
In chemistry lessons, second.
So your teacher know how to make hydrogen.
I think he should.
But you see the way, so this guy, I just watched the video yesterday, my best. This is what I'm doing every day. I'm just like watching hydrogen production, like DIY hydrogen production. The way he does it, you can recognize this is a kitchen utensil. You know, this is to make the eggs.
And inside is the scrubbing.
It's a scrubber. Yeah, and this is a Tupperware. This is just a container to fill the food. And this is a salt dispenser. So basically, if you put electricity, it starts to create this sort of short circuit, like bubble kind of thing. You can improve by adding some chemicals in the water to make the water more conductive. So basically, in this, he explained how you can produce. He also shows very well here on the top side, you mix hydrogen and oxygen, and that's the one that is very, very explosive because it's ready to explode. But the bottom one, which is the one that we are going to be looking at, is hydrogen and oxygen separated. There's another video that I saw that was really awesome, where he teaches rocket science using hydrogen with very, very small rockets. The rockets are just like the size of a pinky, and that works super, super well. I can show you the hydrogen. Oh yeah, these are the pearl oyster. They look very, very different. This is another hydrogen chemistry class and rocket science class. The teacher teaches rocket science just with tiny hydrogen. This is the rockets. They're really, really tiny, just like this size, but it's really, really fun.
Plants, I'm create deals. I get a lot of requests from people that want me to rockets and rocket fuel. So today I figured, let's make rockets. But I'm going to do it a little bit different than you might expect. We're going to make little tiny rockets that we can launch in lab. We're going to have some chemical reactions. We're going to make some fuel and launch these bad boys right across the world. We got a couple of test tubes, and then I've got a stopper with one hole on the top. And that stopper needs to easily fit inside my test tube. Cut this off. So here we go.
It basically shows how it's done.
This is going to become my rocket. The other side, right here, we need this for my gas collection device. Cut this off right about here. Put this right inside of my rubber stopper. And put my pipette bulb on top to collect the gas. We need a way to light the gas or to get a spark inside of here. We're going to use this. This is just a barbecue lighter that we've modified so that we can get a spark. Watch. Spark in the end right here. Perfect. This has got to slide on. You got to have the right size pipette here in order to throw a spark.
So basically explain.
You'll start to see why I put these.
And they make a different mixture of air and hydrogen. And then when they found the right ratio to do the best propellants. And so what he does is create a mix of gas, and then he pops. You see? So basically, he makes the experiment like this, and little by little, then he launch a bunch of rockets, all at the same angle, and then he measures the distance that he can cover. And so he prepares all these different mixes and measure the distance. And so at the end of that, he put a sticker and he said, this is the measurements for each gas. This is, I think this is a super, super fun. And then he found what is the perfect and most explosive mix. Well, I think that's awesome because it's such a small amount. It's not dangerous. And so he showed this is basically rocket science. And so the kids, you can see they are running this experiment, and at the end they can win like a medal, like a rocket science medal. You can see. I think this is super good. So I will copy this this article inside of the page. Okay. So hydrogen rocket science workshop. And the link to. Gus, do you want to show us how the website is structured and show us some of the stuff that you've done? You want to come here? You can. It's maybe easier. So you can explain the page, how it's structured.
So we've got the table of contents here, obviously, and then we've got the key dates. So we've got like the fabrication works, which we're doing right now as well. And then the installation, we want to have it there because we have to tow it there. So we want to tow it from Lo Busan all the way to the North Point venue. So we're hoping to do that by that date. And then I don't know this is here, but we were thinking about doing a little workshop with the North Point residents before we do the actual like installation, so that we have the North Point residents like approval, because we don't want to cause any issues with them because it's their like promenade. So we want to have like a little interactive activity with them, but we don't know what it's going to be just yet. But we want to do that right before the installation starts, so that they're like, okay, that's fine with us. And then we're gonna have the creative works, and then dismantling and installing.
Just a question about the towing.
Oh, yes.
Because
How would that do it?
so the towing, I know you told me before, like you're trying to get in contact with the tower boats, and that's one part. But it's not the mating, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
so how come from now to Sean didn't go?
So I think there's two main approaches. If the structure is light enough, that if it's aluminum, for example, and they are quite light, then we could actually build the parts here and just attach them and basically build them here, stack them against the wall downstairs in the workshop, and just install them and put it together basically on the water. That is one way. If they want, the engineers say that we have to make it out of steel, it's a lot heavier.
Yeah.
So then we can still build it in parts here, but then if I assemble it, we cannot move it. It's too heavy. The way that we do traditionally with the oyster farmer is they build it at low tide. So the structure is simple enough that the barrel, at least the floating part, can be built just in a couple of hours. So in less than 6 hours, we can just bolt it together, and then the high tide comes and it leaves the structure, and then you can just basically by hand, you can pull the structure. This is what we have done with my architecture students. We build the structure in low tides. The high tide came, and then we just float the structure just pushing by hand like this.
The bottom one looks easy enough, but I guess it's more the
yes.
shape that looks
More difficult.
more complex.
Right.
And,
I think it would have to be built in stages. So I think the most important is that the bottom slab is really rigid, because if that wave on every joint is going to be dangerous. It could break eventually. So the most important is the bottom structure is very, very solid. One standard beam is 6 meters long. The structure is 6 meters wide. So my thinking so far was to maybe build this into 6 pieces. So it's basically divide this into 6 pieces, so that 2 of us could lift the bottom frame, like one frame, bolt it together, and then add on top of this the beam structure underneath it to make it more rigid. But that will also be much, much heavier. But like this, it could be just assembled in a matter of minutes for the bottom slab. And also, if there's an accident, or when we need to take it apart, when we need to recycle it, when we need to take it for recycle, maybe in a couple of years, it's also easy to take apart. So this floating structure, originally, we said it was just going to be bamboo, and after the exhibition, it's basically gone. But now, we see that a lot of people are interested in this. We're going to have a discussion with the Maritime Museum, and they may be interested to have it by the Maritime Museum for longer. Maybe I think Ocean Park, we should also at least mention to them that we're going to have this structure. And then we're discussing with some people in Shenzhen, from the Shenzhen Open Society, like the basically scientists in Shenzhen that are interested, and the VNA. The Shenzhen has a Victoria and Albert Design Museum, which is the biggest design museum in the region, and it's literally on the bay. It's on the side of the water in front of La Rochelle, just on the across the river. So I think it's important to make it strong so that we can transport it later if we want to, or easy to dismantle if we need to recycle.
And so we're thinking about Deep Park.
Deep Park, yes, yes. Yes.
Next to the
Tea Park.
I forgot. Which one?
Tea Park is the mall just next door.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The other one, the one that's like for the sewage.
That's right.
Yeah, next to the food zone.
Because if you look at this design, it's a little bit similar to the Tea Park design. Do you know Tea Park? Yeah, you can do. So if you search Tea Park, yes. Actually, it's also a French engineering company. And it's kind of like organic shape building. Yes, this is the same. You see, it's got a similar. But the purpose of this is also to clean water. So what's interesting is that this facility is a water treatment, and also is also water treatment. And right in front of this place is the oyster farm. And so they make the water cleaner. At least that's what they claim. But just next to Tea Park, this is the view from Tea Park. There's the oyster farm right there, just outside of the Tea Park. But just next to Tea Park is from the largest landfill. And when it rains, some of the landfill pollution goes into the river. And so then the Tea Park could have a strong incentive to, in their narrative, to say, we don't only have something on the land, we also have something to clean the water. And they could then claim that they, sequester carbon. They can say they clean the water, they can say they improve biology, they can say that they create jobs locally. It would be really good advertising for them. Yeah. So that could be the next destination of it.
Because if we do the whole rafts, like the Lokusan rafts with the solar thing that you mentioned, how are we going to connect the source if we get it connected to this area?
Yeah, because Tea Park, they already are producing their own electricity. and they have a desalination plant. So they also clean their own water. And they're all like engineers. So I think they would be quite excited by this thing. So I think there's a good chance we can at least have a discussion with them. Maybe. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me show the rest of the page. The second tab. So on the website, so this is currently on caesarharada.com, but yesterday night I bought the domain oceanimagineer.org, and so we can have a custom website, which is not just me, but it's a project where we can all edit the project, so we can all contribute and manage the project together. That's the hydraulic system. You can see the. So basically, you have a piston inside of a tube. It just lifts up. So you don't need to be strong to open it. Anybody can do this.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, what was your question?
Okay, you go ahead. And then I ask questions later.
Okay, so this is our plan pretty much.
So Jess has been thinking about production.
Because originally we were going to get a oyster farmer to build the raft for us, because originally we were going to make it out of bamboo until the naval architect said steel or aluminum. So now that we're going to, I'm not sure about when we're going to order the parts because of the contract.
Right. The contract is signed, so that's the contract is done. The part that is not done is the payment.
Yeah.
So they haven't paid us. So the way they give the money. So I'll be very transparent. The total budget for everything, including transport, insurance, and like being ready for typhoon, which is one of the most costly parts. If there's typhoon, they don't pay. We have to pay for everything. So if we damage something, it's up to us. So the total budget is $1 million. So it sounds like $1 million sounds like a lot of money, but actually, if you know the cost of building something like this, it's actually not that very much. Because just to bring the boat, I think just from Lafasham to the port, it's going to be at least 15,000, for example. Bring it back to be another 15,000. If you have to move it from the case of typhoon, it's going to be another 15, 20,000 at least. Insurance is going to be another 30,000. It goes really, really quick. So the budget is it's quite tight actually. And then if you have to have like 200 oysters under, well, it's already like 20,000 dollars. Now the equipment is already like easily 200,000. Well, you get it. Like it goes up really, really quickly. So we don't expect to make lots of money from this. But if we can make a point that this is a scalable technology to produce hydrogen and solar offshore, and this can create jobs and help the oyster farmer, and then we can make many of them, then maybe it can become an interesting business. At this stage, this is just for education and art.
We had this idea to make it something like we could do like some charity events as well, because we want to have some money donated to the Nature Conservancy, because they are doing so much with the oysters and they're a part of it. But we're not sure what we're going to do exactly.
Yes.
So yeah.
I think it's quite in fundraising. That's the like you need something that is exciting.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think
I'll jump in the water.
Yeah.
To attract attention.
The lab of Professor Rajan is sponsored by Lee Comfrey. So
That's very good.
So it is possible that we end up where like when people step on the platform, then they might see like Lee Comfrey logo because they might become sponsor of this structure.
That would be an actual change. If let's say Lee said, okay, now we're only going to be using Hong Kong produced oysters.
Yeah.
It would be an actual sustainable change in their supply chain. So it would be
locally produced, low carbon, within that would be awesome.
Very interesting topic.
Yeah. So Jess has been working on this calendar.
Spiders and emojis. I make them adorable. So we're hoping to get some volunteers from the TNC to build it as well, because it's going to be a lot of hands-on work downstairs to build the raft. So as soon as we get the payment, we're going to start ordering the parts like the steel and the solar panels. And I've been emailing some people, like suppliers. I had a really hard time with the hydrogen stuff. Yeah.
No, I expected it.
Yeah. And then we're going to start building the raft, but this is probably going to be delayed depending on when the steel arrives.
The steel is not that expensive, so it may be something that Skybox, my company, can front, even if because we don't want to delay too much.
Yeah. So
So it's 29th of June, so you're going to have the insurance.
We have. I want to discuss with Samsung because it's already insurance.
Right, yeah.
So that's what we'll do. No, so this is more like an indication. This is some of our targets.
Okay.
yeah,
But we have to keep moving the blocks.
Yeah.
No, we haven't talked to Samsung yet. But we will. And I expect he's going to give us a price. But we have to get several of them to choose, right?
Yeah,
So
okay. I would advise that as well. Yes. It's quite specific.
We had so do you remember the giant duck? Do you remember a couple of years ago there was a big duck?
oh yeah,
So actually the guy who made the giant inflatable duck, he's a good friend of mine because we used to share a workshop in Rotterdam. Because I used to have a business in the Netherlands. And so he built this floating structure. And so I will ask him, which is the boat company that accepted to tow your giant rubber duck? Because imagine there's a lot of risk, right? It's very big and inflatable, so it's very light. If there's a lot of wind, it can easily, be a problem. And also, like, when they have to anchor it in the port, there's like thousands of people coming to watch it. If the stone under the structure is too light and it starts to drift away, that's going to be a nightmare. So they have to be super, super safe. So I'll contact him. His name is Florentine Hoffman. And he came to Hong Kong a couple of years ago, another exhibition, and then we met and we discussed about. So if we can find this company, basically, we need to find this captain who's crazy enough to say yes to tow a giant rubber duck.
and this definitely won't be a problem.
As long as you pay for it, people are willing to do a lot of crazy things.
Exactly. But then that's expensive, most likely.
Yeah.
So beyond the schedule, can you show the references?
Okay.
Can you show?
These are the references.
You want to explain?
Okay, so before the experiments that we're going to do as well, there's some references like what are oyster spat, because I didn't exactly know what we were talking about in the meeting with Professor Biden. They were like recruitment. I was like, oh my god. And then because we might need to use some other oysters than the Le Fouchon ones. There's the ones that they recommended from Tolo Harbor. Also, they have mussels in Tolo Harbor and some other animals that do clean the ocean. And then the thing with the mussels in the Tolo Harbor is that there were a bit of metal found in them. That might be a bit of a problem. And then this is just some things I added, like solar panels for boats.
So if you click on one, this is Notion, so we'll give you more access to it. So if you're interested to learn more about it, if you are thinking about a workshop you want to organize, or if you have new references that you want to add to this project, then it will be very easy. We can teach you how to use this maybe in the next session. We can teach you how to use this platform. But yeah, so
there's this really cool video on this guy who made a craft, or like a miniature kind of ours.
oh, wow. In a few hours.
Yeah.
Is this Hong Kong?
No,
No.
Because it would be illegal to wear
I think
reservoir.
it's in America or something. And then he used barrels like ours as well.
Sandwich. It's okay if it's got a gigantic hole inside the jacket. It doesn't matter.
And then he connected a solar panel to it as well, which is really cool. It's all motored by it. And we use the same battery system as us.
Yeah, just a battery.
Yeah. And then
I guess it's not.
that is a question that we need to deal with as well.
Yes.
And then I found this really cool thing that I was thinking we could do as well. So there's this organization in Hong Kong that does adopt a pearl.
Huh.
And I was thinking we could do the same, like adopt an oyster, like an oyster string.
Or pearl.
Yeah.
Work with them, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a big fundraising.
Yeah.
IT.
Or the people that like your design.
Yeah.
Like some girls that are doing like
Yeah.
really like artsy stuff.
Actually, I received this morning. There's Thank you has some summer jewelry collection inspired, like ocean inspired jewelry collection. Yeah, they could do some partnership like this.
Yeah.
And then I added this little thing, which was like a safety regulation in Hong Kong for like water safety. I'm not sure if it's Hong Kong. Exactly. But it's just like some little references for if there is an issue with the water and the electricity, because it would be really hard if there's 15 people on there and there's an issue. So I added that as well. And then I made it like there's a database for all like marine animals as well. So we can put that in. And then because I was thinking for one of the experiments we could like put oysters in the Northport Harbor, depending on which animal from Total Harbor or different types of species, and then see if there's any more ecology that it brings, because we're gonna be there for a long period of time.
You can also just go to North Point and see what's there as well.
Underneath right now, yeah, before and after, yeah. And then we did this. This is a big.
I'll explain, yeah. So actually this project, you can see it's quite big, but I also want to simplify and also very, very clearly distribute food as well. Now you understand, like, okay, Makerbay, we are pursuing to work with you mostly from the education side, and maybe on some of the assembly and guilds. But then there's a lot of other people who are interested to join the project. So I'll just go very quickly. So the person who pays is actually the urban renewal authority. It's almost government, basically. When they do reclamation or like big redevelopment project in Hong Kong, typically they are the people who are the organizing people. HKAC is the main client. So this is the art center. So they are the curator. Technically, we only have to respond to them. If they tell us you have to change something for regulation or whatever, they're the people that we have to respond to. As I was explaining for the hydrogen, because we cannot do like a cable, we're talking to this crypto, like a Bitcoin, like this kind of cryptography company, about how to structure the technology so that people can track the green hydrogen using crypto. And so she's in California. No, she's in Washington State, but she's very interested in the project because she has some. She's from Philippines originally, and she has some fish farms in the Philippines. So she's interested in this project for her farms in the Philippines. Then we have the Hong Kong Design Trust. Technically, they are not supporting this project. They are funding the coral bots. So they want to know that this is happening. We need to tell them that we want to do that. They don't know yet. Then we have the NVIDIA who contacted us and they said, hey, you are making robots that go into the sea. And you're saying that you're doing computer vision, you must be using NVIDIA boards, right? And we said, no. and they say, we'd love to feature you in our blog. And I say, well, no, because we don't use NVIDIA. And they say, well, you can feature us if you give us NVIDIA boards, then yes, we can be in your blog post. And they say, oh, okay, how many do you want? So now they just wrote to me like last week. And so we can tell them how many NVIDIA Jetson Nano we want to have. So they're basically going to give us computers for free. And we also had Google contact us, the head of Coral AI, which is the AI hardware branch of Google. They say, if you are mapping Coral with AI, Google branch of AI hardware brand is called Coral. So they say it would be really good marketing if you could use our products on your platform as well. So Google also interested to sponsor the project. And then Supply Frame is an electronics manufacturer, and they organizing some competition with the electronics for philanthropic good projects. And so they're interested to also support the project. It's a discussion we had for a long time, so hopefully we can close this one quite soon. This one is the Consulate of France. So because I'm a French citizen, and because this project technically is part of my PhD. So my PhD is a PhD in design and engineering, and my supervisors is a French engineering school. And actually, the whole concept comes from discussion also with my supervisor. And so they are the one who helped me to write the press release, actually, to think through how do we explain to people this project, how do we make this a design research project as well as an engineering project, a biology project, and sort of wrap it together. So if we could get the French consulates, they're also very well connected to the industry, and that could be a really good organization. Then we have this one is a very specific engineer who's a specialist of this kind of floating structure. So he's an old friend of mine and a naval architect and an engineer in Norway. So he worked in DNV, and they would certify ships and oil rigs for insurance. So when you have to certify an oil rig, it's like $1 billion project. But you have to have a lot of engineers that say, this oil rig is safe, and they have to put the signature, and then they give to the insurance company. So he does that. And then we have Mekabe, and then we have different people. Well, I just put like individual name, just to see what is the stage and what is the role for each person. Ning, Nishant, Alex, Madhavi, she just dropped actually. So, and then there are people that we have in the list here, but we haven't contacted them yet. So we hope to work with them. If you keep going down, Joy Loman, Nisha, I'm trying to hire a person to help us with marketing, to take pictures of the process, manage the press release, and when people contact us if they want to do an interview, so they all come at the same time and all the stuff. Shannon does Megan. She's a citizen science organizer. She organizes communities for like citizen science project. Jeff Warren is a MIT fellow, and he also works on citizen science research. Wilson Kwan, he's the naval architect that he's telling us the tube has got to be this size, you have to use this material, the rope has got to be this size, the weight anchor has got to be that many kilograms, you have to wear that many life jackets. From Typhoon level 1, you have to call this person, he's telling us all the safety stuff.
Did he get back to you on that, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, we have a lot of different people, and then we have my HKU people, the SWIMS people, we have the Live Fish and Oyster people, we have the Safecast and Seed Studio, the electronics and the sensor people. So that will be like the people who sell us the electronics components and who sell us the backend system to represent the data. We have a sensor, okay, but we don't want to build from scratch a whole interface to plot a graph, for example. So there are people who build those systems, so we want them to be partners in the project. And then, so I'm taking to the Looking Glass because I'm thinking one of the ideas of the Looking Glass is a company that was started in Bay. They make holographic TVs. Actually, one of the guys of Looking Glass, he's a crazy diver. His name is Alex Fonstein, and he has been diving and taking 3D photos of endangered species. So he goes underwater with a long bar. On this bar, you have like 50 cameras. And he takes a picture of the fish from 50 different angles at the same time. And after that, he puts this in his computer and he creates a hologram of the fish. And the idea is that he wants to create the zoos of the future without cruelty, where you will go to see the zoo, but you will so you can have dolphins doing tricks up with holograms. You can see like endangered species of like jellyfish with holograms, but you will see it and you will believe it's real because it's so good. Etc. etc. So there's a 50 more people, but they're more like people that we are asking some advice, or people that we want to invite, or people that we want to collaborate with in the future. And so there are different stages. We still need to talk to them, or we're already discussing with them. And then what will be the titles on the poster or in the exhibition. So all of that, we're trying to iron out the details. Okay, so now I think it's already been almost 2 hours. So I want to let you go. But I just wanted to go away with this thought. So this is sounds like an ambitious project, but I want you to think of it in a more simple way. If you go back to the press release, here, you will see that actually the whole project is broken down into those questions. The first question is a biodiversity and water quality question. Which marine species can clean Hong Kong water best? So this is a question for biologists. And biologists, for example, think, well, I need to have different species. I need to have an oyster, I need to have a mussel from North Ocean, an oyster from Tolo Harbor. And then I need to separate them, and I need to see how well they're doing and how much water they're cleaning. So that's an experiment that has a shape, that has a specific type of measurement that you need to do. So that's one question. So if you are going to be involved with biology, you don't have to think about all the partners and the insurance and all that stuff. You would have to focus mostly on the biology experiments and how to measure and to teach and to collect the data, right? If you're interested in a more renewable and energy and engineering aspect of it, and it's more about solar and hydrogen, then what you'll be wondering is which solar panel should I buy? How can I measure the solar panel? Do I need to account for the fact that the platform is maybe rotating when the tide is changing, for example, in my calculation? Or do I just put my solar panel just perfectly horizontal? You know, like how do I store electricity? How much hydrogen am I willing to store on the platform? Yeah. So these are the questions that you will be asking yourself. So now it's not about the whole problem, it's about just like solar panel, cable, batteries, and hydrogen tank. So it's a simple question. If you are interested in the overall design, so then the question is more like, how do you communicate with the local North Point people? How do you communicate with the North Ocean people? How do you organize workshops with the young people so they become interested and they care more about Oyster? How do you address people who care about the suffering, for example, of Oyster? Like, how do you basically be inclusive as an education platform? So I want you to just think about those three questions instead of thinking of, wow, how do you do all the details of it? Because that's more like a problem for me. But I would love you to really be paying just more attention on this. You know, you have a floating platform, and these are the three questions we're trying to address. So what I'd like to propose to you, so today was sort of the introduction and kickoff of the project. Some of you are going to stay longer, I think Nishan, you're going to stay longer. So what I would suggest is that this afternoon we actually start to dive in some of those questions. But what we can do is that we can plan maybe in next week another 1 hour workshop where we only think about what kind of workshop we can do on the platform, you know, what days we want to do it, how we want to price it so that it's also sustainable for Maccabi Foundation to be involved.
I think we could also get, we could like rent the area for workshops with other, like the Kajuri farms or Ocean Park, because it's a really different space. And I think it'd be a really cool opportunity for other people to come, and then we can help them organize like when people will come and visit.
That's right.
Because I found so many places that do it, like the Lions, it's like a conservation thing in Cyclone. And it's kind of like that. And I was thinking the Lofushan farmers could come as well, and then like talk to people because of the whole like negativity around like eating the Hong Kong oysters.
Right.
So I think that could be also an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely sounds good. I think because now you have a few things that are pending, right? Like getting the insurance confirmed, getting the bill from the engineers.
We know it's going to be built.
Yeah.
It's really about the specific of the size of the tubes and stuff like that. So it's the platform that they built is just very specific engineering questions that are being resolved. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think afterwards we can have a look. So before that workshop, I would have a look at the budget so that we see that, because that will also help us to know about the pricing.
Right. We can charge people. So the people who come on the platform, we're allowed to charge them. Also, we need to register the names for COVID tracing and also for insurance purposes. So it's actually quite sort of under control. If we build a custom website and people have a form to register to join the activities, then they can pay on the platform and we can get all the information. So actually, it can be very transparent in how we could even use maybe even use Maccabi ticketing system if it's organized by Maccabi, the education platform. Yeah, whatever is easiest to run it. Yeah. Right. Right. My take on this is that both. So it means that I think there can be just free visits where you just have a quick tour. But then if you want to like teach a workshop and you have consumables and you have to have a booking, then I think we have to charge for those. Personally, I think that starting when this platform is on the water, I think I'm going to be based basically on the platform for a lot of the days. And actually, my course at HKU is going to be about floating marine laboratory. I'm teaching a course about that at HKU, a naval architecture course. So I'll be teaching naval architecture on the floating platform. So I'm going to be on the water a lot. So I was thinking to organize recurrence, like not every day, but maybe every 2 days, do some tours. Jas is going to be also here until December. So she might also be on the platform quite a bit. So like this.
It could also be talks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think it would be really good to have like a good video projector on board, good sound system. Sometimes people can, if we cannot sell oysters, but the local law ocean people want to show that the oysters are delicious and they want to do a free degustation for free. And then people get to come and they can get to eat delicious Hong Kong oysters for free on the platform. That would be legal, that would be fine. Right. So there's two KPIs. One KPI is got to be beautiful because it's art.
Okay.
And the second KPI. It's basically this design is sort of pre-approved.
Oh,
yeah. So if this design is, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do inside. For example, with the lighting. Right now it's kind of flat, but you know, inside of an oyster, there's this kind of crazy light effect called mother of pearl, right? Which is kind of like crazy, super colorful, kind of rainbow color. So there's some really cool stuff that we could do inside, for example, so that we can make it even more mother of. And but apart from this, the second KPI is that the minimum time for the exhibition is basically for the 3 months. If there is a typhoon, we have to remove the installation. If the typhoon is in November, beginning of November, then it's late enough that they don't ask us to put the installation back. If it's early, let's say if the typhoon is in September, then we do have to bring it back. And so this is at our own costs. If there are 2 typhoons, then we have to bring it back for the first typhoon. But if the second typhoon is more than half of the time, then we don't have to put it back. So there are some agreement like this that, yeah, so basically this is an art exhibition and we expect it's going to be art and science. So it's going to be beautiful and people have got to learn something while they come. And the second is that typhoon is the biggest concern because the season. So
The typhoon
season.
very good question.
The reason they did the typhoon season, it was just more like an art programming. They just have the waterfronts. So the context is that the whole north part area is being redeveloped. And so they invest tens of millions to build this new garden. And then this garden actually doesn't attract that many people. And they want to make it more touristy. And if you think about it, you have West Kowloon competing. You have like TST, waterfront being competing. And so Kuntong is actually not very competitive. So they want to bring more people to Love Kuntong Northport area. And so they want to organize these cultural events. And so when they make a call, a competition for artists, they say create an artwork which is going to add value to the waterfront. And they specifically put in the brief that artists have got to make proposition for floating art. That there's no floating art artist in Hong Kong. And so then after the competition was run, they're like, shit, we don't have anything to put in the water. And we still have the budget. So they reach out to me and they say, do you have some ideas? So I've been working with them for the last week and a half to propose them different arts work. And eventually they chose this floating oyster concept. Yes. So that's the background story.
When you talk about typhoon, which
Yes.
typhoon? From T1, T3, T8?
So the proposal that we made was that if there is typhoon, we want to go under the piles of the bridge. So that was the how much higher? So we told them that if there's typhoon, the safest will be that we use some big massive ropes and we attach 4 points and then we just put the platform in the middle. It's like zero risk.
Yeah.
And then they said that this is managed by the maritime department. But this one is the highway department. And then they said that the highway people will never allow us to attach anything to the highway because they're going to say, oh, because of tiny boats, the wind is going to push the boat and the highway is going to fall because of it. Or they're going to say, if you leave any trace of red rope on our platform, then it will say to the people that it's okay to attach your boat to the pile of the highway, and then everybody's going to start to do that, which is illegal. So they basically say we cannot do that. But so what they said is that if you have T1, normally you can just stay where you are and it's okay. Normally you can wait until T3 to take your boat to the shelter. Because you have specific area where you have big buoys that you have to attach yourself. But then they say that if you wait for T3, then it becomes very expensive because the guy who tow your boat, they charge you much, much more. So the instruction that we have is that if you have T1 and there is a chance that it goes to T3, we have to move, which sucks because that means that we have.
Definitely, there is fun.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be negative here, but in the next 2 months, there is going to be too much.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking because it's lightiness.
And so if you have 3 T1 in September, that means we have to pay 15,000, 15,000, 15,000, 15,000, 15,000, 15,000.
How close is the nearest shelter?
So the nearest shelter.
90,000.
Sorry?
90,000 in total.
Yeah. So just to
I think
remove.
90,000 is the optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah. So they say basically if you wait for T3, then a lot of boats suddenly want to move, and then they charge you.
Yeah.
To the wazoo. Yeah. So they said that if there's T1 and it's likely that it goes to T2, T3, then they immediately go because also if they are a boat towing company, we'll be the last one on the list. Because because they're gonna be, we don't want to touch this, right? Yeah. So that's the instruction of the naval architects. So we have to have a big contingency budget for typhoon. And we also have to have a typhoon team. So it means that if I have typhoon, then one of us that are the best swimmers and has the most muscle mass have got to be ready to jump in action, even if it's the night, basically, to go and protect it. Of course, if you do this kind of like emergency team, then you pay more. But we have to have basically a response team. It can be us, it can be people from outside. But I mean, of course, I want to do it. I think it'll be super fun. Good. So shall we set up a time for the next workshop? So when we discuss next. Yes. So what about next Monday? Just the same time? 10 a.m. next Monday, and then we can.
Maybe not 10 a.m. because that's the time of the
meeting for you guys. Yeah. Okay.
10 until 11.
11. Okay. Optimal. Okay. So let's time box it to 1.5 hours max. This is just to sort of brainstorm. So maybe you can do like a design thinking session and come up with some ideas of how to get some workshops. Yeah. So Ocean Imagineer, and I will invite you guys, Ariane. Jason. No. I forgot the name. Sorry. Kelvin. Sorry. Kelvin. And then Ming. Okay, I will add you. Cool. Thank you all. John and John at Makeaway. Yeah. Cool. So I keep adding you guys. Cool. We're good to go. Thanks a lot. I'll keep adding. And, cool. So let's take a 10 minutes break and let's resume for those who want to stay.
So, yeah, wait.
Which means that you guys are good. Yes.
We can say bye to Aditya.
Oh, yes.
So just wanted to let you know, so Aditya, he does a lot of origami.
Oh,
and he
Aditya is
works-
here.
Yeah, he's right there. So he does a lot of
Aditya.
origami, and he also works with like, not bamboo, but like palm leaves, and he creates structures.
Oh, wow.
So I think what could be really interesting is for him to come back with a workshop ideas.
Is he in India or is he going to come to Hong Kong?
He's in India, and Hong Kong
Okay.
travel is allowed.
Okay, but normally, Aditya, you are based in Hong Kong normally or you're based in India normally?
India.
You're based in India.
He
Yeah,
was in
India.
Hong Kong like 4 or 5 years ago
Ah, okay.
for 2 years, and
I
then he
see.
went back to India.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's with his parents there.
Uh-huh.
But he's really good in origami, so he
Okay.
likes to make things.
I
He's,
see.
he's a maker.
I
And
see.
he just make up of anything. And even as I said, like if you find a big bark of palm tree, he just bring it home, and then he'll just weave it and make different things out of it. So I think in terms of workshop ideas,
You can come up
that
with a
he
bunch
could
of,
come up and could systematically kind of create a package so that if somebody's running the workshop here, they know how to do it, and maybe even making this variations of the boat itself
Yeah.
as a workshop
Yeah.
and ideas and testing it out. So he's also one of those people
Mm.
who would, and he has ocean close to him.
Ah,
Yeah, so he's in Mumbai, so we can just
Okay.
go and test a few things out there for us. Or if there is something that you want to do in Mumbai,
yeah.
right here, then that's also something that you guys need to do.
Even it would be possible if you have a good, because Hong Kong 4G network is really good. And so even if it may be possible that you are basically beamed, it
Yeah,
means that we basically have your face
yeah,
live stream in the platform, and you can teach remotely people how to do this like platform and build their own model, the platform, their own designs.
and just about 2 or 3 years ago, I'm not sure, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, is when he started learning Indian classical music.
Oh,
So he plays the sitar and he sings also. So
honestly,
there's an element of music
full
that you want to,
artist.
yeah. So he
Full
is
rounded.
an artist. And he's keen to pursue STEM in university. He's going to go to university next year.
Right.
So he has 1 year before he goes to university.
Okay. So that could be a project or a portfolio.
Yeah. And this summer he's quite okay. So we just decided.
Excellent. Yeah, wonderful.
So I think Adu, I think it would be nice if you can. I'll talk to you separately, but if we can come up with some ideas for workshop, because that's what we're going to be doing next time. And I think knowing you, even if you want to create something and share, that would be like wonderful. Or even some of your previous work, just to give examples that then the team will know what you can do. And we can also discuss with Just where she needs help on things, and then she can assign people to kind of just help her. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I have your email?
Can you share your email on chat? Can you
Yes.
share your email? So that you can be in the group.
Yes, I can like this. I can add you to the. Perfect. Okay. And I'm also going to add you to this to the project here. So like this, you'll be able to edit and have access to the whole documentation. And here you go. So you can see here in the lists. You can see that in the list of okay, send the invitation. In the list on the website, Ocean Imagineer, you can add yourself in a team right there. So
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
in group. So here you could be, for example, a group could be the hands-on core team,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could be like art, design, crafts, for example. And then you can
Yeah.
put yourself in the class as working. So it could be for a team. And then you can put your details here, also your if you have a
Email,
website, if you have a
website.
phone number, then at least it would be easy for us to find you.
Okay.
So
Sure.
you can add your details.
Send this link.
Yeah, so if you go on this page, now you should be able to edit it. You need to register a Notion account with that same email.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have any questions,
Fine.
just message me, okay? And I'll talk to you.
Yeah, 100%.
See you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you. Kickoff.
Yes.